My husband hit me once and told me to keep quiet. Then his mother saw the bruise and did something no one expected. It happened on a Tuesday morning over burnt toast. I've been up since 5 a.m., working on a presentation for work, exhausted from another sleepless night. The past 3 weeks had been brutal. My boss was demanding, the project deadline was approaching, and I've been staying up late, trying to prove myself worthy of the promotion I've been promised. 6 months ago, the promotion that never came. When Damon came downstairs, he took one look at the blackened bread and his face changed. It was subtle at first, the way his jaw tightened, how his eyes went from sleepy to sharp in half a second. I'd seen that look before, usually when I'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning, or when I'd laughed too loudly at his friend's joke at a dinner party. "You can't even make toast right," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm sorry, I'll make more." I was distracted. That's when his hand connected with my cheekbone so hard I saw stars. The impact knocked me sideways into the counter. I heard the crack before I felt the pain, like my brain needed a second to process what had just happened. When the pain finally registered, it was white-hot and all-consuming. "Keep your mouth shut about this," he said calmly, like he was reminding me to pick up milk. "This is between us. Do you understand me?" I nodded, touching my face gingerly. My hand came away without blood, but I could already feel the swelling starting. A bruise was already forming, dark purple, spreading across my skin like spilled wine. I watched in the reflection of the microwave door as the mark bloomed across my cheekbone. "Good girl," he said, and kissed the top of my head, before grabbing his briefcase and leaving for work. I stood there in our kitchen, the kitchen I'd spent 3 weekends painting in that perfect shade of sage green he'd insisted on, and tried to understand what had just happened. The rational part of my brain was screaming that this wasn't normal, that I should leave, call someone, do something. But another part, the part that had been slowly conditioned over the past 18 months of marriage, whispered that maybe I deserved it. Maybe I had been careless. Maybe if I tried harder, cooked better, smiled more, anticipated his needs better, it wouldn't happen again. That's how it works, isn't it? The slow erosion of your sense of reality. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not like he hit me on our wedding night. No, it was gradual. First, it was comments about my appearance. "Just trying to help you look your best, babe." Then it was isolating me from friends. "They're just jealous of what we have." Then controlling what I wore. "That skirt's a little short, don't you think? What message are you trying to send?" By the time his hand met my face, I'd already been trained to believe that everything was somehow my fault. I called in sick to work, something I never did. My boss, Francine, wasn't happy. "We're 3 days from the presentation and you're calling in sick," she said, her voice sharp with annoyance. I mumbled something about food poisoning and hung up before she could argue. I spent the day researching concealer techniques on YouTube. The comment section was full of women offering tips, using casual language like they were discussing favorite recipes, instead of how to hide evidence of abuse. Use color corrector first, then foundation, then setting powder. Green cancels out red, orange cancels out blue. One commenter had written, "Been there, girl. You're not alone," with a heart emoji. How many of us were there? I wondered, hiding the same secrets behind the same makeup. By evening, I'd layered on enough foundation, color corrector and powder to hide most of it in the right lighting. You could barely tell in the harsh bathroom light, though the bruise was obvious, angry and dark against my pale skin. Damon came home that night with flowers. Roses, my supposed favorite, though I told him a dozen times I preferred lilies. My mother had loved lilies, had filled our house with them every spring, until she died when I was 23. Damon knew this. He just didn't care enough to remember. "Baby, I'm so sorry," he said, pulling me into his arms. "I've been under so much stress at work. The Peterson account is falling apart, and my boss has been riding me all week. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. It's okay." I heard myself say, "It's okay." And that's the moment I became complicit in my own abuse. The moment I accepted his excuse. The moment I decided that his stress was more important than my safety. "No, it's not okay," he insisted, holding my face in his hands. The same hands that had struck me that morning. "I promise you it will never happen again. You're the most important thing in my world. I love you so much." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, because if I didn't, then I'd have to face the reality that I'd married someone capable of hurting me, and that was too terrifying to acknowledge. What would that say about me? About my judgment? About the 2 years we dated? The elaborate proposal? The wedding where I'd promised to love him forever? We'd met at a networking event 3 years ago. I was 26, newly promoted to junior account manager, excited about my career. He was 29, confident, successful, charming. He'd made me laugh that first night. Really laugh in a way I hadn't since my mother died. He pursued me relentlessly. Flowers at my office, surprise lunch deliveries, weekend trips to wineries. He made me feel special. Chosen like I was the center of his universe. Looking back now, I can see the red flags I missed. How he needed to know where I was at all times. How he'd get upset if I didn't text back immediately. How he'd pout if I made plans with friends instead of him. At the time, I thought it was romantic. He's just really into me. I told my best friend Madison, he can't get enough of me. Madison had been skeptical. "That's a lot of attention," she'd said carefully, like suffocating levels of attention. But I dismissed her concerns. I've been single for 3 years after a bad breakup. I was ready for someone who was all in, who wasn't afraid of commitment, who knew what he wanted. Damon checked all those boxes. The proposal came after 18 months of dating. He took me to the restaurant where we'd had our first date and got down on one knee in front of everyone. The ring was beautiful, expensive, everything I'd pinned on Pinterest when I was younger and still believed in fairy tales. I said yes because everyone was watching, clapping because the moment felt magical and scripted, and exactly how it was supposed to go. The wedding was 6 months later. My father walked me down the aisle, his eyes wet with tears. "My mother would have loved this," he whispered. "She'd be so proud." I wore her veil. That, but also something else. Determination. Resolution. Like she'd been preparing for this moment for years. "Honey," she said softly, "there's something you need to know about Damon. Something I should have told you before you married him." The way she said it made my chest tighten with dread. What is it?" Ruth pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. Her perfectly styled hair, her designer clothes, her composed exterior, all of it suddenly looked like armor she was too tired to keep wearing. "You're not the first wife." I blinked, confused. My brain struggled to process what she was saying. "I know he was married before, to Natalie. You told me they divorced because she moved for work. That she chose her career over him." Ruth's laugh was bitter. Nothing like the polite chuckle she usually made at Sunday dinners. "Is that what he told you, that she chose her career over him?" My hands started shaking. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. What actually happened? Ruth's eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw the weight she'd been carrying. The terrible knowledge she'd kept locked away. Natalie didn't leave him. She disappeared. The word hung between us like a guillotine blade. Disappeared. 2 years into their marriage, she vanished without a trace. No note, no phone call, nothing. Her car was found at a rest stop 40 miles from here. Her purse was inside, wallet intact. Phone dead. The police investigated for months. They questioned Damon extensively. Searched our house, his office, his car. They treated him as the prime suspect for weeks. My mouth went dry. And they never found anything. No body, no evidence. No leads. Eventually, the case went cold. Damon played the devastated husband perfectly. Gave tearful interviews, posted flyers, offered a reward, got a lot of sympathy from everyone who knew him. Then a year later, at a mutual friend's party, he met you. I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. The kitchen I'd painted, the house we'd bought together, the life we'd built. All of it suddenly felt like it was built on quicksand. "You think he killed her?" The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. Ruth glanced toward the stairs, as if checking Damon wasn't home yet from work. Then she looked back at me and her next words changed everything. "I think my son is capable of terrible things. Things I didn't want to believe until I saw your face just now. Things I've been in denial about his entire life." "What do you mean, his entire life?" Ruth pulled out her phone again. Scrolling through photos with shaking fingers, she turned the screen toward me. The image showed a child's drawing, crude but disturbing. It depicted a female figure lying on the ground, red crayon scribbled violently across her body. Above it in careful second-grade print. She wouldn't stop talking. "Oh my God, he was 9 when he drew that," Ruth said, her voice hollow. "His second-grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson, she'd given him detention for disrupting class. He came home furious. Said she'd embarrassed him in front of the whole class. I found this drawing hidden in his closet when I was putting away laundry. I asked him about it and he said it was just a game, that he was pretending to be a soldier. I convinced myself it was normal boy stuff." Ruth swiped to another photo. Another drawing. This one showing a house on fire with stick figures trapped inside, and another depicting animals with X's over their eyes. The next week, Mrs. Patterson was in a car accident. Her brake lines had been tampered with. She survived barely, but she was never the same. The police investigated but never found who did it. Mrs. Patterson moved away the following year. "You think a 9-year-old? Ruth's eyes were wet now, tears finally breaking through her composed exterior. "I think my son has always been wrong. I think I ignored the signs because I didn't want to see them. When neighborhood pets started disappearing, I blamed coyotes. When his school counselor called me in and suggested therapy, after he got caught hurting another student, I said boys will be boys. When he was 14 and I found dead birds in the garage, their necks broken, I told myself he was just being curious about death." "How many birds?" 17. "All carefully arranged in a row, all with their wings spread out like they were still trying to fly." The nausea hit me hard. I gripped the counter tighter. "When he was 16, Ruth continued. A girl from his school accused him of pushing her down the stairs. She broke her arm. Damon said it was an accident that she tripped. I believed him or I wanted to. The girl's family moved away before any formal charges were filed. Why didn't you tell me?" The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was past caring about politeness. "Why didn't you warn me before I married him?" Ruth's face crumpled. "Because I'm a coward. Because I wanted to believe I'd raised a good man. Because every mother wants to think the best of her child, even when the evidence is staring them in the face. Because by the time I admitted to myself what he was, you were already engaged. And I told myself that maybe marriage would change him. That maybe you would be the one to fix him. I'm not a rehabilitation center," I said bitterly. "I'm a person. I know. His second-grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson, she'd given him detention for disrupting class. He came home furious. Said she'd embarrassed him in front of the whole class. I found this drawing hidden in his closet when I was putting away laundry. I asked him about it and he said it was just a game, that he was pretending to be a soldier. I convinced myself it was normal boy stuff." Ruth swiped to another photo. Another drawing. This one showing a house on fire with stick figures trapped inside. and another depicting animals with X's over their eyes. The next week, Mrs. Patterson was in a car accident. Her brake lines had been tampered with. She survived barely, but she was never the same. The police investigated but never found who did it. Mrs. Patterson moved away the following year. You'd think a 9-year-old. Ruth's eyes were wet now, tears finally breaking through her composed exterior. I think my son has always been wrong. I think I ignored the signs because I didn't want to see them. When neighborhood pets started disappearing, I blamed coyotes. When his school counselor called me in and suggested therapy, after he got caught hurting another student, I said boys will be boys. When he was 14 and I found dead birds in the garage, their necks broken, I told myself he was just being curious about death. How many birds? 17. All carefully arranged in a row, all with their wings spread out like they were still trying to fly. The nausea hit me hard. I gripped the counter tighter. When he was 16, Ruth continued. A girl from his school accused him of pushing her down the stairs. She broke her arm. Damon said it was an accident that she tripped. I believed him or I wanted to. The girl's family moved away before any formal charges were filed. Why didn't you tell me? The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was past caring about politeness. Why didn't you warn me before I married him? Ruth's face crumpled. Because I'm a coward. Because I wanted to believe I'd raised a good man. Because every mother wants to think the best of her child, even when the evidence is staring them in the face. Because by the time I admitted to myself what he was, you were already engaged. And I told myself that maybe marriage would change him. That maybe you would be the one to fix him. I'm not a rehabilitation center, I said bitterly. I'm a person. I know. And Mom, you're going to regret this most of all. Ruth pulled me into her arms and I realized I was shaking so hard. My teeth were chattering. It's over, she whispered, stroking my hair the way a mother would. It's finally over. But it wasn't over. Not really. It was just beginning. At the police station, Ruth told them everything she brought. The journals from her safety deposit box, the drawings, the photographs, evidence of a disturbed childhood grown into a dangerous man. The detectives listened, taking notes, their expressions growing more grim with each revelation. One detective, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes named Detective Morrison, sat across from me in the interview room. Can you tell me about your marriage? She asked gently. Were there other incidents besides the one this week? I opened my mouth to say no, to defend Damon one last time. But then I stopped. I thought about all the times he'd grabbed my wrist too hard when we argued, the way he'd shove me aside if I was in his way, how he'd corner me in rooms when he was angry, blocking my exit, the time he'd thrown a glass against the wall, missing my head by inches, the constant criticism that left me feeling small and worthless. Yes, I heard myself say there were other incidents. I talked for 3 hours. Detective Morrison never rushed me, never seemed impatient. She just listened and took notes, and occasionally squeezed my hand when I started crying. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. We're going to need you to testify, she said, but I want you to know that what happened to you isn't your fault. None of it. That night, I stayed at Ruth's house. I couldn't go back to our place, couldn't sleep in the bed, where I'd convinced myself everything was fine. Ruth made up the guest room and brought me tea that I didn't drink. We sat in her living room until past midnight, not really talking, just existing in the same space. I'm sorry, she said, finally breaking the silence. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. You protected me today, I said. You made the call that saved my life. But I should have made it sooner. I should have stopped him years ago. We both carried the weight of our regrets into sleepless nights. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Detective Morrison called Ruth's phone where I'd been staying. We need you to come to the station, she said. There's been a development at the precinct. A cold case detective named Rodriguez was waiting for us. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. With your husband in custody and facing assault charges, he explained, we finally had cause to obtain search warrants. We went through everything. The house, his car, his office, his storage unit. What did you find? Ruth asked. Rodriguez exchanged a glance with Morrison. In the basement, behind the water heater, there's a sealed-off crawl space. The previous owners never mentioned it, because it was hidden behind drywall. But your son knew it was there. We found evidence that he'd been accessing it regularly. My stomach turned. What was in there? Human remains, Rodriguez said gently. We're waiting on DNA confirmation. But based on the clothing and personal effects, we believe it's Natalie Peters. The room tilted. Ruth grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. There's more, Morrison added. We found evidence of at least 2 other women. Both were listed as missing persons from neighboring states. Rebecca Flores from Illinois, missing for 4 years. Teresa King from Indiana, missing for 3 years. Oh, my God, I whispered. Based on the dating apps on his phone and computer, it appears he was communicating with multiple women, Rodriguez continued. He'd meet them through online platforms, date them briefly, and if they showed signs of wanting to end things, or if they became inconvenient in any way, he'd kill them, Ruth finished. Her voice hollow. We believe so, yes. My husband wasn't just abusive. He was a serial killer. The man who'd brought me flowers and told me I was beautiful. The man who'd promised to love me forever. The man I trusted with my life. Had systematically murdered at least 3 women. Maybe more, Rodriguez added quietly. We're cross-referencing missing persons reports across 5 states. There are at least 6 other women who match his pattern. Met him online, dated briefly, then disappeared. 6. My voice came out as a squeak. We're still investigating. But yes, potentially 6 more victims. The number was incomprehensible. How could someone hide that much evil? How could he sit across from me at dinner, talk about his day, make love to me at night, all while carrying the secret of the women he'd killed? The trial lasted 4 months. It was a media circus. News trucks camped outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions every time we arrived. The story had everything they wanted. A charming killer, a suburban facade hiding horror, a mother who turned on her son. I testified about the assault, the threat, the way he'd isolated me from friends and family. Ruth testified about the warning signs she'd ignored, the journal she'd found, her suspicions about Natalie's disappearance. The evidence was overwhelming. The journals detailed his fantasies. The photographs showed his surveillance of potential victims. The DNA evidence from the basement was irrefutable. And then there were the other women. Rebecca's family testified about how she'd met a charming man online, gone on a few dates, then disappeared. After telling her sister she wanted to end things with him, Teresa's mother described how her daughter had been excited about a new boyfriend, then stopped returning calls. The defense tried to paint Damon as a victim of circumstance. They argued the evidence was circumstantial, that coincidence wasn't proof of murder. But there were too many coincidences, too many bodies, too much evidence of careful planning and execution. Throughout the trial, Damon never showed remorse. He sat in that courtroom with the same charming smile he'd worn when we met, like this was all an amusing misunderstanding. He'd wink at me sometimes when he thought the jury wasn't looking. Once he mouthed "I love you" during a recess. It made my skin crawl. During his sentencing, the judge asked if he had anything to say. Damon stood, straightened his tie, and addressed the courtroom like he was giving a speech at a wedding. "You all act like I'm a monster," he said calmly. "But I only hurt people who deserved it. Women who didn't know their place, who needed to be taught a lesson, who thought they could just walk away from me." The gasps in the courtroom were audible. Even his defense attorney looked shocked. "Mr. Peters," the judge interrupted, his voice cold. "Do you understand that you're making your situation worse?" Damon just smiled. "Worse than life in prison? I don't think so. At least now everyone knows the truth. At least I don't have to pretend anymore." The judge looked at him with barely concealed disgust. "Mr. Peters, you'll have the rest of your life to contemplate. The depravity of your actions. Life in prison without possibility of parole on 3 counts of first-degree murder. Life in prison on 3 additional counts of second-degree murder. 20 years on 1 count of aggravated assault. Sentences to run consecutively, not concurrently. You will never breathe free air again." Damon was still smiling as they led him away. After everything was over, Ruth and I sat in her living room drinking tea. Neither of us actually wanted. The silence stretched between us, heavy with all the things that couldn't be unsaid. "I should have told you," she said finally. "Before you married him, before any of this, I should have warned you." "Would I have believed you?" I asked honestly. Would anyone have? She didn't answer. We both knew the truth. People don't want to believe that monsters look like charming men in nice suits, that they bring flowers and apologize and seem so normal, that they sit next to you in church and volunteer at the food bank, and make everyone laugh at parties. I filed for divorce while Damon was awaiting trial. My lawyer said it would be quick. Given the circumstances, Damon contested it naturally. Even from jail, he tried to maintain control, but the judge granted it after the first hearing, citing the assault and the murder charges as grounds for immediate dissolution. I was a widow before I was officially divorced. That's what it felt like. Mourning the death of a man who was still alive, grieving the person I thought he was, realizing that person had never existed at all. I've spent the last 2 years in therapy working through the trauma. My therapist, Dr. Chen, specializes in intimate partner violence. She's patient when I have panic attacks during sessions, patient when I cancel appointments because I can't leave the house, patient when I cry through entire sessions, without being able to form coherent sentences. Learning to trust my own judgment again has been the hardest part. I second-guess everything now. When a man smiles at me in the coffee shop, I wonder what he's hiding. When a colleague offers to help with a project, I wonder what he wants in return. When my neighbor says good morning, I wonder if he's watching me. Dr. Chen says this is normal, that my brain is trying to protect me by assuming everyone is dangerous, that eventually I'll learn to distinguish between genuine threats and ordinary human interaction. But 2 years later, I'm still working on it. Ruth and I stayed close. In a strange way, we were the only 2 people who truly understood what it was like to love someone, and then discover they were capable of unspeakable evil. She sold her house and moved closer to me. We meet every Tuesday afternoon for coffee. 2 women bound together by the terrible thing we survived. She's in therapy, too, working through her guilt over the signs she missed, the warnings she ignored, the son she raised. She's been diagnosed with complex PTSD. Some days are better than others. Some days she can barely get out of bed. Last month, a journalist named Andrea contacted me about writing a book. She'd been following the trial, had connections with the families of the other victims. She wanted to tell the complete story, how a domestic violence call led to solving multiple cold case murders, how a mother chose truth over loyalty, how the small signs everyone ignored added up to something catastrophic. I said no, at first. The thought of reliving everything, of making my trauma public was too overwhelming. But Ruth convinced me otherwise. Other women need to know, she said. They need to understand that it's not always big, obvious signs. Sometimes it's small things. The way he controls what you wear, how he isolates you from friends, the jokes that aren't really jokes. And they need to know that if someone finally sees the bruise, If someone finally asks the question, it's okay to tell the truth. So I'm working with Andrea now. The book comes out next month. We've titled it The Bruise That Solved 3 Murders. It's sensational and probably too dramatic. But Ruth says it captures the importance of paying attention, of not looking away, of asking the hard questions, even when the answers might destroy you. Especially when the answers might destroy you. I've given talks at domestic violence shelters. Walking into those buildings, seeing the women with their children, their few possessions and trash bags, it's like looking in a mirror of what could have been me. What would have been me if Ruth hadn't made that call? I share my story with them. I don't sugarcoat it. I tell them about the burnt toast, the slap, the threat. I tell them about Natalie and Rebecca and Teresa. I tell them how I almost became the 4th body in that crawl space. And I always tell them what Ruth taught me. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to protect someone from the consequences of their own actions. Sometimes family isn't about blind loyalty. Sometimes it's about having the courage to say, this stops now. Some of the women cry. Some of them just stare at me hollow-eyed and exhausted. Some of them come up afterward and whisper their own stories. I listen to every single one. I hold their hands. I give them my phone number and tell them to call me anytime, day or night. Because I understand now what it means to be believed. To have someone look at your bruise and not make excuses for it. To have someone say, this is not okay, and mean it. Damon writes me letters from prison. They arrive every few weeks like clockwork. I don't open them. My lawyer screens them first and files them away as evidence of continued harassment. He still thinks he can manipulate me, charm me, make me doubt what I know to be true. In one letter that my lawyer read to me over the phone, he wrote, I'm the same man you fell in love with. This doesn't change who we are. You're overreacting to a momentary lapse in judgment. A momentary lapse in judgment. That's what he called murdering 6 women. That's what he called the assault that could have killed me. That's what he called his decades of violence and manipulation. He's wrong, though. I'm not the woman who fell in love with him. That woman died in the kitchen that Tuesday morning, when his hand met her face. A different woman emerged from that moment, scarred, traumatized but alive. And this woman knows better than to believe his lies. I've started dating again, though Dr. Chen says I should take it slow. His name is Owen, and he's nothing like Damon. He's quiet where Damon was loud. Patient where Damon was demanding. He knows about my history. I told him on our second date. Figured it was better to get it out there early. If you're going to run, run now. I said he didn't run. He just reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Thank you for trusting me with that, he said. We can go as slow as you need. We've been seeing each other for 6 months now. He doesn't push. He respects my boundaries. When I have panic attacks, he talks me through them without judgment. When I cancel plans because I'm having a bad day, he says okay and sends me soup from my favorite restaurant. Ruth likes him. She has good instincts. She told me after meeting him for the first time. And she would know. Her instincts about her own son were right all along, even when she tried to ignore them. Some people ask me if I'm angry at Ruth for not warning me sooner, for letting me marry a killer, for staying silent about her suspicions. The truth is more complicated. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I wish she'd spoken up. Yes, I lost 2 years of my life to a monster who nearly murdered me. But I also understand that she was carrying an impossible burden. That she was trying to reconcile the little boy she'd raised with the man he'd become. That she was hoping against hope that she was wrong about her own son. And in the end, when it mattered most, she chose me. She chose truth. She chose to break the cycle of enabling and excusing that had allowed Damon to kill 3 women before me. That took courage. I'm not sure I could have managed if I'd been in her position. We celebrated the guilty verdict with champagne in Ruth's living room. It felt wrong at first, celebrating while families mourned their murdered daughters, mothers, sisters, but we weren't celebrating Damon's conviction. We were toasting survival. We toasted to Natalie, to Rebecca, to Teresa, to all the women who don't make it out, to all the mothers who have the strength to turn in their own children when they realize the truth. And we toasted to that one moment in my kitchen, when everything changed, when Ruth saw the bruise and asked the question that saved my life. My husband hit me once and told me to keep quiet. His mother saw the bruise and did something no one expected. She chose me over him. Justice over family, truth over comfort. And that made all the difference. Now I wake up every morning in my small apartment. Ruth's casserole in my fridge. Owen's good morning text on my phone. Dr. Chen's number on speed dial. I make my coffee. I go to work. I live my life. Some days are hard. Some days I see a man who looks like Damon from behind, and my heart stops. Some days I have nightmares about the crawl space, about becoming another body wrapped in plastic. Some days I can barely function. But I'm alive. I'm here. I survived. And every day, somewhere, a woman looks in the mirror at a bruise she's trying to hide. Every day someone makes excuses for violence. Every day someone chooses silence over safety. This is for them, this story, this book, this truth. If someone sees your bruise and asks the question, tell them the truth. Because somewhere, there's a roof waiting to make the call that saves your life. Somewhere there's a Detective Morrison ready to believe you. Somewhere there's a way out. You just have to say yes when someone finally asks the right question. You just have to choose yourself. Even when it feels impossible, you just have to survive one more day, and then another, until one day, you look in the mirror and realize you're not just surviving anymore, you're living, and that's what Damon could never take from me.